Let's continue our topic of institutional factors that can promote development. And this time let's look at political stability and political instability. In developing countries, the strength of government is fundamental in ensuring whether development outcomes can be achieved or whether they're not going to be achieved. So if there is political stability, if governments are efficient in allocating resources, if they're efficient in adhering to the needs and wants of the general public, then you can imagine that there'll be huge development gains as a result. Potential increase in foreign investment. It's going to attract firms to come over, knowing that there's no unnecessary bureaucracy, no unnecessary regulation, no unnecessary paperwork or elongating of the business process. It's going to attract foreign investment. It's going to mean that if they need aid, if these countries need aid, they're going to be more likely to get it, knowing that when the money is given to governments, the government is going to redistribute it or use it wisely. It's also going to mean that the needs and wants of the public are going to be listened to. If politicians are elected in power, they're going to stick to adopting the policies that actually got them power in the first place. But if there is instability, and specifically revolutions, wars, any kind of instability in this way, that can be a huge detrimental effect on the economy. You look at Sudan as a prime example. You look at Egypt recently as another good example of how political instability can cause development uproar. What can happen if there is instability? Well, there could be a loss of infrastructure. Wars are a classic example of how modes of transport or transport infrastructure can be destroyed. Telecommunication infrastructure can be destroyed if there is political instability. Similarly, a loss of investment. You're going to reduce potential foreign investment, and potentially you can reduce aid incomes as well. So political instability is detrimental to potential development outcomes being achieved. But just generally, we know how beneficial a strong government can be. Something that can get in the way of that, something that can get in the way of development all the time, is corruption. Now, corruption you can bring into any development essay completely. Any essay you're writing, you can always talk about corruption. It's a major problem. It's a major barrier to development. It's a major hindrance to the progress of these developing countries. And it's important that you as students don't stop at the word corruption. There's a lot of analysis you can go into here. There are a lot of good examples you can give of corruption. So don't just stop at the word corruption, because corruption can take lots of different forms. Okay? It could be in terms of inefficient regulation, right? So if politicians need to enforce regulation, they turn a blind eye to it instead, right? Massive inefficiencies there. It could be in terms of reducing FDI flow. So if there is corruption within government and politicians are not sticking to their word, or if they're acting against what the intentions were in the first place, then that can actually reduce the amount of FDI coming into the country. Corruption can take the form of bribes. It could be bribes in terms of businesses having to pay an extra cost to actually grow their business, or to build factories, or to invest in capital machinery, whatever it might be. The government may actually force bribes to take place first, which increases the cost of producing. It can also mean that actually government investment in key public sector areas like healthcare and education may be put off, knowing that the government can bribe the private sector. And this is a very interesting concept here, because money is often made heavily in the private sector, in the capital sector. So politicians may well actually force people that actually work in these sectors to pay bribes for them to actually pursue profit maximization even further, to pursue growth strategies even further. And in a way, if these people accept these bribes, then what's going to be neglected is spending on education and healthcare instead. So by bribing capital owners and giving them what they want in return, there may be a neglect of investment in healthcare and investment in education, which can be a massive problem as a result. Corruption in terms of allocation of resources or projects being given to the highest bidder instead of to the most efficient producers, which again is a negative of corruption, another way corruption can manifest. And corruption in a legal sense. So if there are any legalities that need pursuing and need enforcing, corrupt authorities or corrupt politicians may again not enforce those legalities and instead just go against them. So in that sense, corruption can be a major problem. We always make the assumption that governments are for the well-being and are for the support of their populace. Well, not necessarily. Politicians may have their own motives, may have their own ulterior motives. And we can always question the efficiency of governance as a result of potential corruption. You look at India, you look at Indonesia, you look at Sri Lanka, you look at lots of sub-Saharan African countries where corruption is a major barrier to development. So you can always bring in corruption to an essay. And when you talk about corruption, like I said, don't stop there, bring in some examples, but also talk about how that's going to lead to a misallocation of resources, it's going to lead to government failure and hold back potential development outcomes. That's how you bring in corruption to an essay. It doesn't just have to be when you talk about political stability, it can be in any times when you're questioning the potential benefits of development. Thanks so much for watching. Very important video this one. See you next time.